Good evening, guys. This is Chris from Dorahacks. Today we are very happy to have the very first Klaymaker pre-hackathon developer workshop, Klaytn Blockchain 101. We are very honored to invite Neil, who is the head of the technology advocacy, to join with us as the speaker. So in this workshop, we will cover Klaytn design, consensus mechanism, and visions. And before we start, please allow me to briefly introduce the background for this workshop. So this is actually the very first time that Klaytn hosts their hackathon by using Dorahacks hackathon infrastructure. And also it's the very first time that we can support Klaytn actually. For this hackathon, we will mainly focus on 5 topics. They are core protocol, metaverse and NFTs, DAO, DeFi, and public goods. Also, there will be more bounties that's sponsored by well-known partners and companies in the technology space. The official hackathon will kickstart on August 29th, which is end of this month. So if you are a developer, if you have any interesting ideas that want to be tested out based on the Klaytn blockchain, you are very welcome to join the Klaymaker hackathon. Klaytn and Dorahacks will provide you not only the competitive hackathon prizes, but also a series of support on many ways. So for more information details, please feel free to find out on Dorahacks and Klaytn website. So back to the main topic. Let's welcome Neil. So Neil, it's your time. Feel free to start when you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I will just take it away. So hi, everybody, GM, and I don't know, good day, everybody. So today we're all here because of Klaymakers. I am here. Obviously, I'm Neil Yu. I am head of tech advocacy at Chris. Just introduce myself at Klaytn. And today I'm going to give a topic about Klaytn Blockchain 101. In the past, we have so many 101, but I just want to talk about that. We're all here because of the Klaymakers22 is our global hackathon for Klaytn, not for the very first time, but really we're trying to reach out to audience all around the world to have innovative implementations from you guys, from the Klaymakers, and then obviously you will earn the reward. You will have interesting kind of innovations that you're going to have for Klaymakers, and then what's going to happen next after your innovations that could be a successful service building on Klaytn. And as I introduced myself previously, I am mostly at Klaytn focusing on the developer advocacy and also leading the effort of the open source R&D at Klaytn. Yeah, so when you look at Klaymakers really very quickly, before we jump on to the Klaytn 101, is just want to say thank you very much for everybody right here, as you can see from the screen. The different Web3 company, Web2 company, or any organizations actually sponsor these, support these, and make this happen. And finally, we have our first developer workshop right here, which is Klaytn 101. As Chris suggested already, I'm not going to cover all this very detailed, but when you look at it, Klaymakers, we are presenting an over 1 million in US dollars cash prize, incubators opportunities, and also the investment opportunities right here. But when you only look at the cash prize, we offer a 360K that would be spreading between 5 main tracks. So you think about 60K per track for the price. And also we have 6 sponsored challenges from our sponsors, which we call the bounties on the Dorahacks platform. In the meantime, during this kind of journey that we have for the upcoming 8 weeks that you see, including the live sessions that you're going to have, you will see a lot of developer workshop, global kickoff, and demo day, and also importantly, product vouchers from AWS that will be giving the first 200 lucky participants to have the vouchers to use on the AWS services when you sign up or register on Dorahacks platform. Great. So if you do have any questions about Klaymakers22, scan this code go to the Discord. We have focus channels of this. You can ask all the questions right here at the end of this session, or you can just jump right away, go to the Discord and fire away your questions. You will get the answers very, very soon. All right, finally, going back to the main dish that we're trying to go through today. This is the outline for the Klaytn Blockchain 101. We're going to start with Klaytn in a nutshell. Then we talk about, okay, so all of these kind of advantages that we talk about, I mean, the technical advantages, how do we actually make it enable? Then we go with the consensus layer for our, Cypress mainnet, or also obviously the Klaytn blockchain. And then we talk about some visions about Klaytn 2.0, EVM equivalence at Klaytn. And some, obviously, when you start building, you will have some questions about some development considerations and any resources that you can actually go with. And then what happened next after this first developer workshop. Great. So Klaytn in a nutshell. So when you look at Klaytn, our main goal of the as a standalone layer 1 blockchain, what we think about is that we're trying to empower every organization in the world with a robust blockchain ecosystem. So you can think about, we have to focus on the institutions. We're trying to build an enterprise blockchain. Yes, but at the same time, there are a lot more use cases like that, as you can see from your right-hand side, with different use cases. They're not only from institutions, they're all decentralized organizations, they're all Web3 organizations trying to build their use cases in DeFi, gaming, wallet, obviously toolings, NFT. These are essential because the main goal right here, we're trying to build a blockchain ecosystem. We're not trying to own everything. We're trying to make sure everybody, contribute and building on Klaytn, from Klaytn ecosystem to the Klaytn ecosystem. And when you think about it, actually from the start, the whole project for Klaytn is a blockchain arm of Kakao, and actually initiated by Kakao and being built by GroundX in the first place back in 2018. And obviously right now we've got Crust, fully support Klaytn Foundation on a mission for global adoptions of the Klaytn ecosystem all around the world, so that different use cases could be building on Klaytn. Then when you look at the Klaytn blockchain snapshot, then you understand, oh, really, when you look at like back in 3 years ago, is we actually modify and streamline Git fork, code base. And you think about it, it's a Git fork code bases, right? Essentially, we use the Ethereum client Geth and how we can make it possible with the EVM, and also what we mentioned, the KLVM from Klaytn side, and to make it a bit different. And when you look at this, like we do have a service-centric hybrid architecture, meaning that when you look at the right-hand side, with one big mainnet, what we call the Cypress, and on the side, individual companies or individual use cases or individual categories, say like game or metaverse or different categories of the chain, we call it the application chain. That actually just to build a layer 2 around it, what we call the service chain. But when you look at different style, when you build on Ethereum before, then you think about this is just sidechain. But then the implication from the technical side is actually the scalability is way higher, because you need to look at how many consensus nodes right there on your sidechain. But come together, when you look at the Klaytn mainnet, we are talking about 4,000 TPS transaction per second. We talk about a instant finality. The block finality that we talk about. Well, every single second, we're going to be one block. And by the way, it's a very good news. Around next week, we're going to hit 100 million blocks. I think this is quite an achievement for a standalone layer 1 that show our stability, that show our long-term durability right there on the Klaytn ecosystem and the blockchain. And going back to the 2-second round trip transaction latency, because this is normally people talk about scalability, they only talk about the 4,000 TPS, how your mainnet could be able to process. But normally in a user perspective, people normally care about, okay, end to end, you tell me, Neil, if I find these requests from my backend or from my dApps all the way via the consensus node to the smart contract, creating new transactions, the transaction being mined in the block, and then the block being produced. These end-to-end journey, how long does it take? So we talk about a 2 second, actually 2.1 seconds, which will be covered a bit right down the next slide. But just want to talk about that scalability actually come with these transactions per second, which is the target that you could actually do, and also the transaction latency that you can think of end to end from a user journey. When you look at like how does it how like Klaytn could make this happen, like it depends on how many consensus node that you're running, depends on how many endpoint node or server that I'm going to cover later. But I just want to say that Klaytn is actually driven by the consensus that is given by the governance council that we have on the right hand side. This is the temporary list of it. Obviously, at the moment we have way more, but you think about we have a target. Currently, we got 34, and then we are thinking about to actually drop it all the way up to 50 by the end of this year. And the decentralized coming from the endpoint node and consensus node can give us this kind of certainty about the scalability that we have, because we're just focusing, I mean, as a standalone layer one, we're focusing on different use cases. We never thought about we are these the competitors of any other or the major Ethereum, after the merge. We don't regard Ethereum as a competitors, and we don't regard ourselves as a competitors of Ethereum, because literally you will know why when I talk about equivalence. But just want to say that different layer one blockchain, they have different focuses and use cases, and nobody is anybody else competitors. But anyway, so so server chain tune and file tune configure as a Klaytn sidechain, and actually with independent validator set that, as I said. When you really look at the whole Klaytn blockchain offerings, as I mentioned already briefly about the 4,000 TPS that you talk about, the speed and reliability, the data availability as well, not just the reliability of the chain, but when you look at it, is really, I talk about 100 million blocks that is going to be next week. It's going to be quite a celebration right there for the Klaytn team, and also to the Klaytn ecosystem and community. When you look at speed, reliability, flexibility about a service chain that I mentioned, like you have a lot of different built-in high performance layer 2 service chains ready for you, one click away, one command, you run the Docker Compose packages right there. You want some sample local node that you can run with, and then you can also test with some kind of test net that, I mean, obviously standalone blockchain, you got test net for your own use cases. But I think when you're trying to start building, everything should be either your local node, test against your local node, or maybe test against the server chain that you're trying to run locally, which is the local node, a bunch of local node. And most importantly, I think it's going to be against the test net, which is what we call the baobab. But I just want to mention that there's a lot of way that when you build dApps, you have a smart contract, you want to test around the features. There's a lot of different forms of network and endpoint node, which I'm going to cover in a second. What does it mean? Major is RPC API for you to call, some proper endpoint for you to test. That's a lot that you can actually go and get from these presentations. I mean, the developer workshop. So so when you think about the flexible fee delegations and the cost predictability, you think about we have a fixed gas price, just different model from Ethereum. They think about is actually low cost, and the gas price is actually expected to be fixed, so that your gas fee and transaction fee as a whole is actually predictable. And so last but not least, the frictionless implementation. But I just want to say that it's really it's really easy to integrate with other. If you have the use cases that from Ethereum, if you're trying to extend it to Klaytn blockchain, essentially you don't have to do anything. You just do the same thing as you do on Ethereum, which is deploy your smart contract ALC 20 or 721. If you've got a smart contract for NFT 721 or 1155 right away deploy to Klaytn, it all work the same as you expected on the Ethereum ecosystem. I covered this already, and when I talk about the 2.1, this is more like on the performance and finality. You think about Klaytn is 1 second block time, and obviously if you benchmark with different standard layer 1 or layer 2 or even layer 0, as I said, Polkadot, we actually run some kind of latency research, excuse me, and you can actually get more detail from the link. But just want to say that we 1 second block time. The transaction latency, as I mentioned, where they would benchmark with different layer 1 or major blockchain infrastructures. And you can see the result and actually how we actually carry out the test from the GitHub link below. You think about 2.1 second Klaytn transaction latency is actually amongst the shortest time that you think of when it comes to the end-to-end journey, which I just mentioned. Which is really important to the user experience. If you're trying to build your dApps, you need to make sure your mainnet or even your testnet will happen as the speed that you expect to have from your dApps use case, from your user requirements as well. So after all these benefits that we keep talking about, how technically Klaytn make this possible? Is it just like a unachievable promises or what? Like, so first of all, it's not something unachievable. It was a promise, but it's also an action. It's something that you can see already and you can use and enjoy right away. So we cover the service-centric hybrid blockchain infrastructures, how we could actually make it like interoperable for people actually running their own sidechain, how we can actually make it for the whole ecosystem have a high scalability, how we build the bridge, essentially deploying smart contract from the both mainnet and the service chain to have the bridge on the value transitions. How do we actually get it happen? It's all because of the service-centric hybrid blockchain infrastructures that we have been building from our side. And as I mentioned, Klaytn is actually going with a 3-node structures, as you see. When you look at the yellow area, that will be the audience, like yourself, will be building. As a developers, you just want to have your smart contract, you have your dApps, you just want to deploy it somewhere, have your smart contract deployed to the mainnet or testnet, and how the SDK or from your dApps essentially calling the endpoint, right? So calling API. So how they can actually access these, what we call the Klaytn API, similar to Ethereum API, so that they can get access to different interactions with the on-chain data, or maybe with their smart contract directly when they deploy to the mainnet or any testnet that you would like to have. So the point is actually we have the endpoint node, mostly is the RPC API, and currently we have different ecosystem partners being part of it and running it for Klaytn, which you will see when you go to the Klaytn docs. When you click onto the button, you will see there's actually open API that you can call just to access the RPC API to do whatever you would like to do from your dApps perspective. And most importantly is this is open to everybody to run it. And this is how the decentralization layer that Klaytn is actually coming from. And then proxy node and core node or consensus node, but my language is just the consensus node. So consensus node in pair with the proxy node is actually run by the governance council that I mentioned. This is just I would say like a very specific organization way of how we would like to see the consensus at Klaytn, how we would like to think about how to be more decentralized in the future. But we all talk about the blockchain trilemma problem. You can only get the 2 out of 3. And our decision was go with the scalability, because we would like to go with the performance promises to the organizations actually building on Klaytn, or maybe use cases building on Klaytn. But most importantly, we know that if you are too less decentralized, not good for an open network. But again, we are an open network. Decentralized is just a comparative term. And obviously, we could be more decentralized, and we will be more decentralized going forward with our future initiatives. But yeah, just that is something that I would like to say. But most importantly, going to the nitty-gritty of it is like the consensus mechanism that you think about Klaytn, which I'm going to cover in a second, is actually based on the Istanbul BFT. Is BFT cover is actually run by POS, because the governance council, they got the stake on it. They will get to be as a block proposer for different round. And that's right, it's IBFT plus the POS. The 3-node I mentioned is actually extended with the account model. You think about multiple key pairs per on-chain account. You think about you could be having different, multiple formatted transaction models. Essentially, you can have different signatures field right here in a transaction, which is very different from other EVM blockchain that you see. But then this one is just our own things that we're trying to make Klaytn to be really special from a security perspective, to enable multi-sig on-chain for our users. So I mentioned it is dynamic, but deterministic gas model that we talk about for your transaction fee being counted. First in, first out. And most importantly, we have Klaytn specific pre-compiled contract, just like all this kind of proxy code that you may be having if you're developers of the smart contract, you know what pre-compiled contract that would do for you. We have our own standard of Klaytn pre-compiled contract as well. Okay, all the way from the start in 2018 in June, as I mentioned already, we were actually a gift of Ethereum. And when you look at different areas, I mean, technical areas of Klaytn, so we got different application, wallet, interface, executions. And when you look at it, like if you focus only on the orange and the purple and also some yellow, we actually make a lot of changes in application, wallet, interface, execution, synchronizations, and storage from the Ethereum from the start. And obviously, like I said, we were trying to look at different problems to solve. We were thinking about we would like to be different from other standalone layer one blockchain so that more and more use cases will adopt the Klaytn ecosystem and build on it. And since the start, we have been building our own UX, what I call the user experience, because the reason why these are all different right here, we're trying to build from the start, is we would like to have our own user experience. We would like to have our own user focuses and requirement. That's why you see all this thing from the previous slide. Multi-key account model is not one account, one key anymore. Is you can have multiple keys that stick with the same account, and you can think about the on-chain multi-sig account control, you know, multi-sig transaction model, and all this kind of thing about the randomness for the block proposer. They're all very different from the start when we were GitFork up until now. So other things is quite different, and how we can make this possible is that when you think about the account key update from a security perspective, and we have different security and enhancement, as you can see, you know, by changing the private key, by applying multi-sig, you know, by applying role-based key for different scenarios, as you can see, like the transaction key, account update, or fee payer, and all this kind of thing is like just different use cases for the role-based. We're trying to make, when it comes to the account model, we're trying to make to be more secure. And, you know, like I said, at the end of the day, we are all solving the same puzzle, the blockchain trilemma, and how one could be really innovative to have the maximum of the three, security, decentralization, and scalability. That will be the key for the success for any standalone layer one. But at Klaytn and the developer communities that we have at Klaytn, we try our best to be really standing out and make sure the UX that we're trying to have will be successful and stable. If you're anxious, obviously you will be anxious because you're trying to build something different out of the 5 tracks that we talk about. And I think this will be very much related to the core plus track that we talk about at the start. And please have a look. As I said, all the way from the start, if you don't mind, I know it's crazy. We have 5 tracks. The core plus track is mostly when you're trying to make some you know, change or improvement on the Klaytn core protocol, which literally cover what I have just said. You can base on it, do a bit more research, think about what could be the innovative use cases to actually make some changes on the core protocol of Klaytn. And going forward, obviously, you have Metaverse, NFT. We put it together as a track, as a what we call these kind of creator economy that we're trying to build in a decentralized way. And then DAO and Fine Plus in the world, you've got so many DeFi, SoFi, GameFi, whatsoever fine that we talk about right now. We just want to think about that should be going in the same track. And public goods are really important for blockchain ecosystem as well, because when you look about the GOP 27, or 28, forgot it, 27 is going to be coming up at the end of this year. So many people will be thinking about how blockchain post the POW world, how blockchain could be greener, and how blockchain could be maybe solving problem about a supply chain. And this is all about the social good. So we would like to have your idea and creativity on the public good, and have build more use cases for the social impact. You know, like to improve the social impact, or just think about how we can change the world with your use cases that you'll be you know, submitting for this hackathon. So it was the references that I'm trying to put. Relax, so you don't have to do this kind of taking pictures whatsoever. The video will be there all the time, and we will be open source these slides as well. So you can always come back to just click the link and learn a bit more. I know it's a list but I will have some surprise for you at the end of this presentation. You can just go to what we call the developer hub that we have just announced, the Klaytn developer hub. So you will have the one-off resources hub when you start building. We are here to support. Anyway, so we briefly touched about the point about the consensus. We talked about what is IBFT, is POS, but how does it work really? But then we need to think about the questions, first of all, like people keep talking about consensus mechanism. That would be really like a key problem that people normally think about when you're trying to build your layer one, because consensus algorithm affect everything, affect the TPS that you're going to have, affect the whole making of your core protocol. But what is the consensus model? But simply put, really, like people have different types. After the merge, Ethereum will be from POW to the POS. And people argue about the decentralizations about between the POS, POW. Like I said, everybody got their own design decisions and they have their own focus on the UX. And the consensus model, what is a consensus? Basically is which node and who is producing the next block. And then the one that produces the block, the blockchain state being created, being broadcasting to different node on the same network. And this is essentially consensus, that who is the one producing the next block? How can you find out who will be the next one? So POW, I'm not going to cover that. It's just people solving the mathematical puzzles. POS, depending on the stake that you have. And you've got different examples, as you can see from the right-hand side. And from us, it's really different that we take IBFT or maybe type of the PBFT, practical BFT, as you said. But we go with the Istanbul because we just love how not just obviously not the overhead of the communication that you see from different phase, but how it could make the 1 second block time happening that will be fully fitted with what we call based on the time model. We just calculate the time for different block, which is not based on the gas limit, to make that a 1 second block time for different transactions to be package in a block. So when you think about a consensus algorithm that we have, is actually coming up with different phase, just like a very standard IBFT. You go with the prepare, the pre-prepare, you got prepare, commit, and final. And as you can see, you got different peers, and every transaction that you see from the left-hand side is all done by the consensus node in the same network. And what happened down below is really depending on how you're going to design it. And what we design, what we have been doing that from our end is just to think about 2F plus 1 is the magic number that you think about. And from the new round to the pre-prepare, pre-prepare to prepare, etc. We do have different rules of it, which I'm not going to cover all the things, but you think about this is a classic IBFT that we're trying to run. And further, how does it relate to the proof of stake? Because you think about the consensus node actually run by the governance council. Individually, they stake 5 million amount like that, or some amounts of case like that to be the validator node. When you think about the block proposal selections, is actually based on what we call the Gini coefficient, whether people would like to argue about the randomness of it right here. And that's why the team has been thinking about to make something different, to be fully random and more random. I would say, like I said, random and decentralized is a comparative term. And you could be more random, you could be less random, you could be more decentralized, etc. But as you can see from these, is the block proposal is actually everybody based on the stake that you go in. And then the Gini will just have to apply weight like that to look at the randomness you have, and block in, block out, you will be having different block miners, and the block proposal that being selected, and then they will take the block, mine the block, get the block reward, so on and so forth. And recently, if you have been following the Klaytn, obviously, all directions since last year, we're trying to be globalized. Obviously, now we are still trying to be more globalized, and in the meantime, to secure our local market in Asia as well. We were very successful, and we have been very successful in Asia, and we look to be more global because we don't believe nowadays the world should be Web2 that will be driven by company. The whole Web3 idea is driven by the community. and the community that they're distributed. They're not staying in a specific location. But obviously, Web2 companies, they will be, basing in different. Obviously, some of them they're global. But what I'm trying to say is, everywhere you got fantastic use cases, and they should be building on different layer 1 blockchain like Klaytn. So Klaytn 2.0 was strict right away when we have these global focuses, and we're trying to pitch the focuses to be focused on the metaverse. And by doing that, we're trying to have a bit more integrated, I would say, build experience. Kind of a hip word, but I promise you I didn't actually spell it wrong, but I spelled it in this way on purpose. But anyway, so what we're trying to do is trying to build the open source staff ecosystem. You have so many open source toolings that in the ecosystem, and these ecosystem partners and yourself, maybe one of the ecosystem partners or ecosystem player on Klaytn ecosystem, then you can just harness all this kind of open source packages, and you can use it and build your own stuff right away instead of scratching your head and build everything from the scratch, and I don't know, take a bit time right there for you to make it an industry level product that will be running on Klaytn ecosystem. We are trying to lower the barrier for the developers to pump out more meaningful and quality use cases on Klaytn. Yeah, high performing mainnet, as I said, 4,000 TBR is not good enough. It's not good enough from our point of view. Layer 2 is a big area. It's not just sidechain or service chain that we talk about, if you know what I mean. And roll ups, you can go with different routes and go with the canary network on different runtime. Working with a layer 0, then you can have a more interoperable layer 1 layers interfacing with different layer 1 blockchain project out there. So it's really a lot you can think about trying to make it high performing. And most importantly, right, we're here for the hackathon because we're trying to have a community and funding support for you. When your solutions will be the winners at Klaytn, what we're looking at next is not just stop there when you took the reward. We would like to continuously support you to be successful from a solution to a service on Klaytn ecosystem. Great. So we covered this already. 1 second finality, Ethereum equivalence, metaverse package, towards more decentralized. We know that, like I said, there's a lot more way that we can think about the ecosystem and the mainnet itself to be more decentralized. But this is a great topic for us, how we can keep the other two happy, on the blockchain trilemma, but at the same time, we can explore more opportunity to be more decentralized. You think about DAO will be a solution, and that's why the third category is about DAO. And we would love to have your innovations and implementation to make it different, at the Klaytn ecosystem. Great. So I think I will cover more about Ethereum equivalence in a second. We still got 25 minutes left. I think we are still on time. But yeah, sorry about that. I think you could only ask questions at the end of it, but I was trying to answer all the questions that you might have. If we couldn't, or if we don't have any questions at the end of it, which is, I will be a happy man, obviously not. So you can go to the Discord and you can keep asking when you were building. We can foresee that when you start building, you start having more questions. And when you go to Discord, we have the ambassador, the dev ambassador right there, and the tech team or the dev team from Klaytn actually will be there to answer your questions, to give the support that you deserve. Great. So I mentioned open source metaverse package ready for builders. And what we focus is all these kind of things that we're trying to build, like the dedicated package manager, Oracle Bridge, like the distributed file store is really important when you're trying to build some kind of NFT with a huge amount of metadata that you need to think about where to store and how to make it distributed. And this will be important. And normally when you build an NFT, you think about a wallet and chain explorer, for the mainnet. I think that would be some kind of open source packages that going forward. By the end of this year, you will see things being rolled out part by part. And when you go to Twitter, go to any Discord channels that we have, keep posted on it. We will be. But you should be, stay tuned, and you will see more surprises coming up towards the end of this year. Yeah. So on the right-hand side, I don't have to talk about that. Just we need to think about like the extensive ecosystem to enhance your solutions. We would like to have more DAOs joining on board at Klaytn. then you could be part of the DAO, part of some of the DAOs that is actually running on Klaytn. The futures looks bright, I would say. Yeah, so EVM equivalence on Klaytn is really making a difference how we stand out from other layer one blockchain by thinking about our close relationship with the I don't mean the Ethereum foundation, I mean the Ethereum ecosystem, like how we are similar technically and how people can be building their stuff, their implementation on the Ethereum ecosystem, and how easy they could extend their use cases all the way to the Klaytn ecosystem without any barrier because of the EVM equivalence, because of the support of Ethereum equivalence that you see. Like I said, people talk about EVM compatible. It could be a fully native execution environment, or like we said, the runtime environment, or it could be fully equivalent with the EVM. At Klaytn, we have achieved the EVM equivalence already, but I just want to go all the way back in the past when we were building Klaytn 1.0 pre-2021. We were trying to be Ethereum compatible blockchain, but when we look at what we're trying to do, we would like to keep our own features and our own data structures, all these kind of account models that has been making Klaytn to be specific. At the same time, we're trying to be having a bit Ethereum compatibility so that the developers can use Web3.js, for example. Like, it's really practical, right? So I mean, if you start learning blockchain, obviously you go with the Solidity, then you think about, okay, so how do I link up my smart contract with my backend logic? You go to Ethereum API, and then you just need to have the Ethereum API, like the ether.js, and then you make your use cases happen. Then you will be thinking about, all right, so what will be the environment that I should start building? Can I go with the hi-hat? Could I go with the truffle? That's why people actually, when they start learning, including Marcel back in 2015, everybody just start with this journey. And we don't want to have people give up this journey and this kind of support and these kind of toolings, amazing toolings that already in the world. Then we don't want to have something from the scratch. But then at that time, we had a pain point is Klaytn did not keep up with the latest EVM versions, because every EVM version must be a pain for us to actually to keep up with, to have different changes on the JSON RPC, just to be a bit different, or maybe I would say similar in the past, because we're trying to be Ethereum compatibility to enjoy these benefit for people building on Klaytn without any changes, just trying to lower the barrier to onboard on Klaytn. So it results in putting much effort to port, integrate, or update Ethereum dev tools to Klaytn, which we think we don't want to do anymore. And then what we did is we were thinking about, if we don't go with the compatibility, given that we are having KLVM, and then we're trying to think about, would it be easier if we go with the EVM equivalence to make it, at least the runtime is fully equivalent with the Ethereum ecosystem? Yes, so that was the solution, literally. So we would like to cover every EVM feature, and then we would like to think about every Ethereum developer, the development tools, could be applicable for the developer, which is yourself. When you start building, you don't want to go with different tools. If you have been using Ethereum development tools, keep using that. Like for the hackathon, like the same, you can use the ELC if you would like to for a smart contract standard. Everything will be just like the same. And most importantly, with the advance of the EVM equivalent on Klaytn ecosystem, we start to talk about a concept support of Ethereum equivalence, meaning that we can support both Ethereum formatted and Klaytn formatted transactions at the same time. And it could actually make us distinguish both chain and transaction types with Klaytn, because you need to think about, if you're trying to process both formatted, there should be different environment and different functions that from your lower end, from your lower level to process that from our API, say like, if that will be going to our Klaytn code base, which is the repository that you can Google, is everything open source. By the way, Klaytn is everything open source. You can go to the Klaytn GitHub and then see about the latest development, today we just released the version 1.9.1. So come in and have a look. But I just want to say that the EVM equivalence was being enabled since the Klaytn version 1.8 back in the start of April or the end of March. It was a Cypress hard fork that we have. It was successful until now. Nothing seems to be happening, and then we start to seeing more generic transactions from in Ethereum formatted transaction format. And then this is something that we would love to see more. And even after the merge, we would like to keep supporting the merge. And from a layer one perspective, standalone layer one perspective, mostly the word equivalence or compatibility is coming from us. So what we can do in this space after the merge to keep making Klaytn to be successful in terms of EVM equivalence will be the key for the whole blockchain industry as well, because we believe EVM will be the go-to standard for the runtime. And then we would like to keep doing that at least for the expected amount of time that we could see. But then think about how we can do something cross runtime would be something quite interesting to solve, right? So I just mentioned something right here in words, but when you go to the graphics, when you look at it, this is what I mean. We have different formatted transaction, which means that when you go to our kfer.js or whatsoever Klaytn API or Ethereum API toolings, that you will see we do support different formatted transaction like the Clay formatted or Ethereum formatted transaction. But at the same time, we need to have a logic in place to distinguish both when we are processing a request from our side in different Clay API or in different Ethereum API that going into the Klaytn core protocol repository out there. But anyway, so what I said is the blockchain core, we do have that logic to distinguish, at the same time support both. And we also have the EVM plus because we have our own pre-compiled contract. Now you see why I mentioned that in the first place, because all the things finally link up together because we just have our own use cases. We need to think about our own pre-compiled contract and our own pre-compiled map because you may be using the same OX address for a specific pre-compiled contract, but we're trying to make a bit different so that we won't be crashing with the same OX format from the Ethereum when people are trying to, submitting Ethereum formatted transaction to Klaytn. Great. I mentioned that EVM equivalence give us very good opportunities and a lot of opportunity, I would say advantages. On the EVM and API, on the development tools level, and on the core development contribution. What do I mean? When you look at the last point that I said, I cover already, we do believe EVM is the industry standard, and being equivalence is also an industry standard. And there are a lot of opportunities out of it, to be honest. But what I mentioned is people can start using the same development tools for both Klaytn and Ethereum on both sides. That should be the same. EVM API, which is EVM equivalence. We have the set of equivalent opcodes. Like I said, you can easily extend your use cases from Ethereum ecosystem. When I say extended, not replace, right? So extended your use cases from Ethereum ecosystem, and then trying to extend it to Klaytn and try to experience the benefit that you can get if you have different design focuses or considerations. So that would be good for you to go in. And most importantly, it's about the core development contributions. What does it mean? Normally, people have a lot of improvement proposal. Klaytn the same. And you're trying to build a KIP, meaning every KIP that you build from now on will be a contribution to EIP at the same time. And vice versa, every EIP will actually, the contribution to KIP, to the Klaytn ecosystem, because of the EVM equivalence that we talk about right here, make the use cases really different and make it really interoperable between both ecosystems in the blockchain industry. So going forward, when people talk about EVM, what are the opportunities? Neil, you keep saying EVM, EVM, EVM. Yes, these are the advantages that we talk. And also, like in the future, like you might be seeing a lot of EVM bridge for all this kind of EVM compatible blockchain or EVM compatible blockchain environment. Because, for example, like I'm not going to mention the brand, but then when you look at a project called Aurora, obviously they can run an environment of EVM on their standalone layer one. This is making something different because the compatibility and the equivalence has made it EVM really the standard. really the industry runtime standard, then you will start seeing more EVM cross-chain bridges. Why not? That will be the major bridges for the really hardcore layer 0 development. There is layer 0 protocol out there. There is a layer 0 protocol out there. And people trying to think about if they can have a cluster logic of all the standalone layer 1 blockchain. They can have a cross-chain application. For example, what about a cross-chain ownership of the NFT? If I deploy my smart contract to Klaytn and I own it, does it mean the same that I own the same thing on Ethereum? Do I need to deploy another smart contract trying to link it up from both ecosystem? Could layer 0 protocol make a difference with the EVM to EVM cross-chain bridge? So that will be something that maybe you can build as well. Why not, right? So that's why you have different categories and track for you to build something amazing. And we would love to see amazing stuff as well. We would love to see your innovation and your power to make our ecosystem to be really different. And that's why we have run different hackathons right here. EVM to EVM is a good start, but EVM in EVM could be something really deep. The Ethereum Foundation or the Ethereum ecosystem is trying to solve at the moment. So I'm going to go very quickly right here. Literally, we've got 12 minutes left. For NFT development, we think about, as I said, we have the equivalence in place for EVM. Things have been really simple. We have the standard mapping between the 721 to 17, which is our own non-fungible token smart contract standard out here. You think about the 1155 ELC is actually 37. We have the standard mapping. And then there are tons of different metadata management that you can actually explore at Klaytn. And not to mention, Klaytn is one of the 4 chains that is integrated with the OpenSea. You either deploy your smart contract and listed your NFT on OpenSea with Klaytn, Ethereum, Polygon, or Solana. So when you look at it, Klaytn actually got some standalone benefit, as I mentioned in the past 30 minutes. So you can think about how the advantages being here, I think is really, really special for everybody. So more references and some development considerations that you can think about, which I will give you some time to have a look when I share the slide, and you can always ask the question if you don't understand it when you look at the slide. Consideration and some development resources. You can go with the network basics, as I mentioned already, cover that in the first part of this presentation. You can go with the different token standards that we keep talking. The repository is really important. One of those is the awesome Klaytn. When you look at it, you got all this kind of repository and tools that you can kick started with building. Your ideas should be coming from this list because these are the tools that you can use right away when you build your implementation. As long as you would like to build your own tools, we are always welcome because we would like to see more tools, to be honest. So more documentation, you can reach out, check out the light paper, etc., etc. But then you may be asking, hey, Neil, it's really a lot like, what is this? A lot of references right here. I want something simple. And we hear that, and we have been hear that. So that's why we have built the Klaytn Developer Hub, and which makes your life way easier, that you can just think about, go to start building right now at Klaytn. You can actually go to individuals repository that I mentioned already. It's more like graphical. It's easier for you to digest, obviously, and all the tools are ready with the developer resources. Then you can just keep cracking on and go into it and see how it goes. I know giving me product is not important, Neil. I want to have the menu. How do I use it, right? So we do have different developer tutorials for you to kickstart it already, and we're going to have more because our developer advocate at Klaytn, they're working round the clock to actually work out a lot of meaningful and useful developer tutorials for you, for our developer and our developers communities. So yeah, so that would be something that I would like to talk about. You can go in, you think about this is a complete menu and collections of developer resources of building on Klaytn ecosystem as a start. You can just scan the QR code right now, right away, or you will take the slide, or you can just go to search Klaytn Developer Hub. I think you will have everything at your fingers. Great. So next up, what's going to happen? We just finished up the Klaytn Blockchain 101, which is the very first one. And next week, you will start to see more Klaymakers22 challenges. These are the sponsor challenges, their bounties. Individually, they will explain their services, how they would be related to the Klaytn ecosystem, how they would like to be supporting the Klaymakers, how their problem statement is about for their sponsor challenges. So stay tuned for next week for more. And you think about August 29 is the start day of the hackathon, which is right here. August 29, we also have the kickoff ceremony, which our representative director, Sam Searles actually will be speaking at it. For both sessions, we have both sessions on that day, one in English, one in Korean. Obviously, the project born and raised in Korea. We have a very strong base of Korean developers right here back in the country and in Asia. So we would love to have this opportunity to onboard more Korean developers that we have, or maybe any Korean speaking developers that living all around the world. So I just want to say that you will see that today. It's just a 101. It's a technical overview. You might be having a lot more problems about, hey, what do you mean by the Ethereum equivalence? We have a session for this, as you can see. Okay, how exactly, you mentioned these kind of metaverse packages. How can I use that? We have a build on Klaytn ecosystem session coming up on the August 31st. How do I mint the NFT, and how can I know more about the NFT ecosystem on Klaytn? We have a session. And going forward, we have 4 more, which we would like to cover end to end. This is the word, end to end, for you to help you get all the things that you need. The Klaymakers22 challenges, you see Groundx is actually our sister company to actually initiate the Klaytn ecosystem, right? I mean, the Klaytn blockchain. I think that will be quite interesting for them to come in to talk about the starting journey and what what is happening at their side right now, what kind of tools that, for example, the Klaytn API services actually run by Groundx going forward, how these will be supporting the Klaytn ecosystem, how people like you can make use of the KAS right away when you build your implementations. And we will be ending with the surface chain tutorials, because we think that you might be interested in building some surface chain innovations. And the ZKP, obviously, is a lot happening. You see, you see there's a lot of ZKP implementations being pumped up or being generated or created right there in the blockchain industry. Then what is happening at Klaytn? And when it comes to this field, well, what have your ecosystem been achieving in terms of this, how it could be interoperable with different ZKP implementation. I didn't say roll up, but then normally people think about ZKP roll up, ZK roll up, but this is just an implementations of ZKP. We will have a session cover that. And last but not least, this is important. So what happened after the hackathon for the winners, for the finalists, or any participant? Is there any opportunity that I can transforming my solutions to be a successful and quality services on any layer 1 blockchain, mainly starting from Klaytn? So this will be a session that we will present all the opportunities for you after the Klaymakers, after the hackathon on September 13th. Great. So I'm quite sure you see the same slide, but I just want to cover that. If you do have more questions, feel free to scan this QR code or just click this when you got the slide, or just type it right now, right away to our Discord. Have all your questions right there. I think that should be it. That's me. We got 5 minutes left for the questions. Chris, take it away.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Neil, for this very detailed presentation for all of the audience and developers. So I got a couple questions from the audience. So like the first, well, so he asking about your opinions. What do you think about Klaytn? But I guess it'll be more accurate to ask in this way. Like, would like to know, like, how do you think after the technology updated, how do you think the whole Klaytn is upgrade compared with previously? And also would love to hear a little bit more about the future plan for the Klaytn development, maybe in the next couple, 1 or 2 years. Yeah.
Great. So what you see, how we're trying to make ourselves to be different is, like I said, the UX is really special. Starting from Klaytn 2.0, the user experience that we're trying to focus from our layer 1 blockchain is essentially metaverse. I mean, when you're trying to build your metaverse application, we're trying to be the layer one metaverse blockchain for all the metaverse use cases. We're not building metaverse as a service. We're not building only one metaverse use cases, but we want metaverse use cases to be built on Klaytn. But going back to this, I would just sort of my terms is specialized UX has been making us very different. The interoperability that we see with the Ethereum equivalence, and also how the developer barriers that to be start building on Klaytn to be lower. I think that has got a lot of opportunities to our developer community to start building and generating more use cases, interesting use cases on Klaytn, to trying to make the whole ecosystem to be really special. And down the line on the layer one perspective, we're thinking about how we can be more compatible with other layer one, so that obviously people talk about layer zero, you can just be a zone on a specific layer zero. You could be just running something something on a specific layer zero. Yeah, we are thinking about how we can harness all the best opportunities that we have at the moment. You think about Klaytn 2.0, it's all the way about metaverse, everything about lower the developer adoptions. That's why you see these kind of open source metaverse packages, and that's what we have been making ourselves to be different. And then the second part of the questions was asking about the future plan at Klaytn. Internally, from the team that we have been talking about, after 2.0, it's going to be a 3.0, right? So how are you going to make this different? Like how you, like people think about the blockchain trilemma that I just mentioned, how you can maximize the three trilemmas, the three elements of the trilemma. I don't want to have 9 elements. I don't want to have 9 problems right now. I mean, 3 elements of the trilemma. How you can maximize it, how you can be scalable as possible, but then at the same time, you're more decentralized than what you compare with yourself in the past year with the Klaytn 2.0. There are different ways. We start talking about, okay, this trilemma should be starting from a point from the mainnet. We talk about the mainnet scalability. We talk about the mainnet security. We talk about the mainnet decentralization. But then now, when you look at these kind of supporters, including Dorahacks, that you think about, I mean, by the way, thank you very much, Dorahacks, for organizing this exclusively for Klaytn, and Klaytn taking Dorahacks exclusively as our submission platform for the hackathon. I mean, you have different ecosystem partners showing a lot of love to the blockchain ecosystem that we're trying to build right here. But going back to our point is, not everything should be starting to think about from the main protocol perspective or the mainnet perspective. We're talking about the ecosystem. We're talking about the ecosystem scalability, the ecosystem security, and the ecosystem decentralization. How you can make your blockchain ecosystem to be more decentralized is something that we are thinking about, and we don't mind making like drastic changes to hit the goal, because the whole thing is all about adoptions. The whole thing is all about the ecosystem adoptions from different Web3 companies or Web2 companies in the world, or even Web1, if you can find any Web1 companies nowadays. But we're going forward. Let's talk about Web4 or Web5 in the coming years. When we integrated with different amazing AI models and machine learning models to make the life to be easier for the multi-agent system that we're trying to build in the industry. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, yeah, Klaytn 3.0 is on the way. We are thinking about what we should do. When we have more details, that will be the reason why you need to scan the QR code and get to the Discord to stay tuned. And feel free to ask more specific questions in the Discord channel. We would love to have more because these are the resources, these are the seeds that we have more innovations in our Klaytn ecosystem to make it different in the blockchain industry. All right, do we have a few more questions, Chris?
I think due to the time, I think that'll be all the questions.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you very much, Neil, again for this presentation, and also thanks for all the audience, listeners, developers to join us today. I believe this session is super helpful for developers to understand more about the Klaytn visions and future plans and some technical details. And as you can see, there will be many ambitious moves for Klaytn in this year, and this Klaymaker Hackathon will be absolutely an important part as a flagship event for driving the growth of the Klaytn developer community growth. Yeah, so like Neil mentioned, absolutely stay tuned in Klaytn's and Dorahacks social channels. We will keep announcing more announcements through our social channels. And also we will have a series of the workshops like today's in the next couple of weeks. So if you are interested and want to follow up, please make sure that you follow us on YouTube or Binance Labs, so you won't miss out any of the upcoming sessions like today's. And for all the builders and developers, if you have any ideas that want to be tested out on Klaytn, please stay tuned. More details will be announced very soon. Seize the chance to join the hackathon. Yeah,
great.
so
I think I have one more comment very quickly. I'm quite
sure.
sure people got some questions and I don't want to be not answering questions. If you do have any questions, scan this QR code, go over the Discord. We will be answering like that. I will be answering like that personally right after this, I promise. And then one more thing, as Chris mentioned, we talk about Klaytn 3.0, right? So these Klaymakers and the hackathons is actually thinking about yourself. We would like to have your implementation and we would like to have you to be part of the Klaytn 3.0. Because the innovations that the developers committee that will be pumping out will be essential for us to have the future successful strategy for Klaytn 3.0 that we talk about. But anyway, over to you, Chris, to close this session.
Yeah, I have no more things to be added.
Okay.
But like Neil mentioned, scan the QR code. Stay tuned in our social media. And hope we can see you guys soon in the end of this month for the Klaymaker hackathon. Yeah, thank you guys very much again, and thank you Neil again for joining us today. Thank you guys for your time. Yeah, hope you guys could all doing great.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.